was created to be a warrior vessel. Many great warriors reside within me, ever dreaming of becoming a great champion. It's my destiny, and the reason for which I quest. It is my ordeal, you could say. To test myself, to better myself, to fell ever greater foes. And then, one day, we'll be a single great champion. The greatest of them all.
Alright, welcome back to Honored Madman. I hope everyone's doing well and enjoying that DLC, because we've got our first video on that subject today. Not really a major lore point or anything like that, but we're going to talk about the jails of the Shadow Realm today. And also about how these jails gave way to the creation of the living jars that we know and love so much. So across the land of Shadow, there are, I believe, 3 jails total, but there might be more. 3 that I'm aware of. And these places sort of double as living jar production plants. The first one you're likely to come across is the Bellarat Jail, which is located, unsurprisingly, right at the base of Bellarat Tower. Now, the tower itself is effectively a settlement for the antiquated race known as the Hornsent, and just like the race of humans, the Hornsent had their criminals and they needed somewhere to send them, thus the jails were born. These places have a pretty cool design. They're expansive underground structures with bridges, cells, lunchrooms, and jar filling rooms. The underground setting of the jails has also cultivated a frigid cold. Now, this might have been a deliberate choice to house all these dungeons deep underground in frozen caves, presumably to keep the meat fresh, for lack of a better term, because a good amount of these prisoners in all of these jails were eventually just turned into innards for jars. The practice of turning people into the innards of living jars isn't exclusive to the jails either. It can also be found in Bonnie Village, for example, which itself is essentially a much darker version of Jarburg. Instead of being filled with friendly jars, Bonnie Village is filled with murderous potentates using butcher knives. These potentates were individuals who were undoubtedly charged with ritualistic chopping up of people to put in the jars. There was almost a religious aspect to it, where a shaman would, slice a bunch of people up using a toothed whip, which is basically a whip made of rotting teeth from previous shamans. And cutting up the meat with this whip has the unique property of making all the wounds it leaves pussy and fester, which makes the innards a lot easier to stick together and fit inside the jar. And that, combined with the extremely cold conditions of the jails, led to the birth of the frozen maggots. These maggots would spawn, for a lack of a better word, in and around the jars due to those nasty pus-filled wounds that acted as a glue that kept the innards together. This, combined with the frozen climate, appears to have tempered the jars in cold, making them sturdier and much harder to break than their lands between counterparts, even the ones that are tempered in magma. And it's worth noting that the jars of these jails in the Shadow Realm aren't one-to-one exact copies of the jars in the lands between. There is one significant difference outside of their frozen nature. Actually, it might be 2 things. There's the symbol on their lid, which in the base game always depicts the Erd Tree, but in the Shadow Realm it depicts a mass of knots. Or perhaps a labyrinth? I mean, you be the judge. The Shadow Realm big warrior jars also don't appear to have the bracelets or the armbands that the ones in the lands between have, but other than those 2 things, they're functionally the same. Becoming a jar wasn't the fate for every prisoner. It also doesn't seem like it was a fate desired by many of the prisoners, judging by the ghostly dialogue. I mean, sure, the jars are revered as saints, and there's all these cool little shrines to massive jars inside the dungeons, but the process in becoming one with a jar was pretty horrifying, as we already explained, so it's understandable that most of these prisoners just would rather not have that and just continue on as their ghostly shadow spirits. It also looks like the creation of living jars, at least in the realm of Shadow, doesn't have a 100% success rate. Some of the jars just can't contain their rebellious fillings. And what's interesting about the sentient innards once they've removed themselves from a jar is they appear to have developed a face and long gray hair, which is quite interesting given their horrifying appearance. Now, the jars and the spirits are not the only inhabitants of these jails. For example, Bellarat, at the very bottom of this massive, really cool mini-dungeon, is a very skilled goblin who once served under the Carrion Royals, but has since abandoned his service to them because he believed that the stars would only bring ruin. and he seems to be down here by choice. Bonnie Jail, on the other hand, curiously enough, has one of the curse blades, a named one named Libirth, lurking at the bottom of it, which seems a bit strange until you read Curseblade Mira's Spirit Ashes. So basically, the Curse Blades were these famous dancing ascetics who had originally set out to be sculpted keepers but failed and chose to live out their days as dancing warrior monks. They were sort of like these revered cultural figures for the Hornsent. And sculpted keepers are an integral part of the Hornsent religion, and they often practice the art of horn calling or horn hexing. A good amount of these sculpted keepers go on to become horned warriors, but only the best of the best become lion puppeteers. Curse Blades were essentially highly skilled warrior dancers who had initially aspired to become sculpted keepers but ultimately failed in their efforts to become a tutelary deity. Even though they didn't achieve their dreams, there was still room for them in the Hornsent culture, and they most certainly weren't looked down upon. They were still pretty revered. Well, until they weren't, at which point most of them wound up imprisoned. The jury's still out on why this happened, but my guess would be that perhaps the Hornsent, who were already doing pretty badly in their war against Mesmer, felt that the Curse Blades reminded them too much of their own failures, and perhaps couldn't stand the sight of them. Now that's just obviously speculation. Obviously not all of the Curse Blades were imprisoned, because we could find a couple at Bellarat Tower, and of course the ancient ruins of Rau, I don't know how to say that, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The jungle biome that looks straight out of God of War 2 or even an old Sonic the Hedgehog game. And it makes sense that those Curse Blades would be there. I'm going to probably do a whole video about the Curse Blades and the Hornsent and Bellarat Tower, but I wanted to start with something small, hence us covering these jails. But anyway, obviously those places have a lot to do with the Hornsent and that ancient race. And I'm veering kinda off topic, but at every one of these jails there is a sort of hidden jar elevator, if you will, that leads you to a unique and cool item. For example, in Bellarat Jail, it leads you to the Great Jar Helmet, and in Bonnie Jail, it leads you to the Dark Set, the Night Set. Basically, you look like a Nazgul or Sauron. There's also a Lamenter's Jail, which houses a unique horned goblin type guy capable of using the Shadow Clone Jutsu. That particular jail has a couple cool items like the Chilling Perfume Bottle and the Call of Tibia, but I'll probably cover a lot more of that when I talk bosses, especially one as strange as the Lamenter. The two jails I was mainly focused on today were, of course, the Bellarat and the Bonnie one, and it's mainly just because I wanted to talk about a little bit of this DLC with you guys. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot to mention that like Bonnie Village and these various jails aren't the only places that seem to produce jars. This practice can also be witnessed in Mesmer's Shadow Tower, as seen right here. Man, I can't wait till I get to cover this place because there's this whole Bloodborne-esque research hall type thing. It's really cool. I can't wait to get into that. One thing I wanted to speculate on before we go is the curious title that these jars possess. They're saint jars. And I wonder what made them saints. Could they perhaps have been employed by the Hornsent in their war against Marika and her offspring? Could explain why they were viewed as saints. I mean, people make this sacrifice sometimes willingly, most of the time unwillingly, to become one with a jar, and the Hornsent get heavy units in the form of these warrior jars to fight in their wars against the Erdtree before they were, defeated. And maybe a handful of these jars, or perhaps just the practice of it itself, eventually spread to the lands between, and that's why we see so many shattered jars near all the minor Erdtrees and their avatars. Perhaps the warrior jars feel it deep inside their innards, this desire to challenge the Erdtrees, if you will. And again, I guess the alternative is just that the Greater Will and the Golden Order, they liked this practice of jar making so much, they just incorporated it into their own system in some sort of vague capacity. I don't know. I like the idea that these jars are remembered as saints because they made this, or their contents made this great sacrifice to become a heavy unit in the wars against America. Of course, I could always be wrong. I could also speculate a lot more, but I wanted to make this one a little bit shorter than usual. And I know this is actually one of the rare bite-sized videos, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the NPCs because, man, they're all so cool. Leda is a total paranoid, fanatic. Hornsent is basically a vengeful revenant of a people who were long since oppressed. Ansbach is probably the coolest of them all, and I never thought I'd be saying that about a pureblood knight, but I mean, here we are. What a great quest that guy has. But But yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. I'll just leave it at that. I really like these characters. Moore is also great. Theolier, or whatever, however you say his name, is great. I like his quest a lot too. But you can definitely expect videos on all of these guys, or maybe they won't be individual videos. Maybe I'll just do one video that covers all of these NPCs in the Lands of Shadow. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, whether you'd want individual videos dedicated to each of these NPCs, or just one that covers them all in one fell swoop. I got a lot of stuff planned though. Probably the next thing I'll talk about regarding this DLC is going to be the Horn Scent and of course Bellarat Tower Settlement. And obviously the NPC Horn Scent and my favorite guy Ansbach are also going to for sure get some sort of individual video. But I can't really think of anything I've missed, so I hope you guys found this video to be at least somewhat informative or entertaining. If you liked it, please like it. If you dislike it, please dislike it. And if you like hearing me ramble on about various things, probably going to be focused mainly on the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC for the next couple weeks. But I talk about other stuff too. Please consider subscribing. We just cracked 26K. Pretty big deal to me. Let me know in the comments how you guys are all liking the DLC. I'm having a blast. I think the aesthetics of all these different regions and biomes are really just amazing. The music is also quite great. And as I already said, I love the NPCs. I love how involved they are with the journey. But this isn't my review. I'll stop rambling now so we can have our outro and then, of course, the final thoughts. Alright, anybody still listening? I gotta say though, I was wrong about a lot of stuff in my predictions video, now having played the game, but I definitely feel like I was giving Mikola the benefit of the doubt and, believing he was a good guy and as good as he said he was, and without spoiling anything specific, let's just say he's not. Now, I never ruled out that he was just a master manipulator because there was all that hinting towards it in the base game, and it turns out that, that was actually pretty founded. So yeah, we are an anti-Mikola channel now. We are a pro-Saint Trina channel though. Let's not get that confused. We're also a pro-Mog channel now, which is going to carry some weird connotations based on how I've talked about him in the past. I'm being intentionally vague, but I'm sort of just giddy with all this stuff I want to tell you guys, but I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't beat it yet, so hopefully I didn't inadvertently spoil anything, but I wanted to leave you guys with these lingering mysteries. I'm sure some of you guys have beat through the DLC twice now and have more knowledge than me, so maybe all this talk about spoilers is just me wasting my breath, because I don't really care too much about spoilers, but I know it's a big deal for a lot of people, so I'm just trying to, not spoil stuff for those guys. Anyway, though, the next video will definitely have a fair amount of spoilers regarding the main story of the DLC. It's not going to be covering the entirety of it, but, we'll be talking about a lot of the implications of the new information we've got in this DLC, and, well, that'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, I'll be leaving things off here. I hope everybody has a good rest of their day, and I will be seeing you guys very, very soon. I'm not going to have no weekly uploads. It should be like every other day, because I just want to talk about this stuff, But yeah, until next time, everybody, be safe, and I'll see you.
If Mikola's redemption soothes the ache that throbs within, demanding blessed vengeance, and I wish that to be by him ready.